In this video, we will tell you about 5 of the most unusual and shocking things Queen Elizabeth I did to stay clean. And the last one, you simply will not be able to believe it. Queen of England and Ireland, Elizabeth I was a living legend. She called herself the Virgin Queen, wore luxurious dresses covered in jewels, and ruled for 44 years with a sharp mind and a firm hand, beginning in 1558. Crowned in 1559. She became the last monarch of the British Isles from the Tudor dynasty. People remember her for her magnificent court, her victory over the Spanish Armada, and for turning England into a powerful Protestant state. However, behind all that beauty and power, under a thick layer of makeup and the sparkle of pearls, was a woman full of fears, pride, and obsessions. She cared deeply about how others perceived her. And when it came to cleanliness, things became truly strange. In that era, hygiene was not associated with caring for health. It was all for appearance. And Elizabeth turned it into a kind of performance. She believed that water could cause illness. She was so afraid of aging that she treated her body as something sacred, something that should not be touched by either time or even soap. Elizabeth had a strong addiction: sugar. At that time, sugar was a luxury available to very few. It was rare, expensive, and brought from distant lands. Most people could live their entire lives without ever tasting it. But for the Queen of England, it was everywhere. She did not just love sweets, she literally drowned in them. Her royal banquets included candied violets, sugar-coated fruits, sweet almond marzipan, and desserts soaked in syrup. Possessing sugar was a sign of high status. Elizabeth not only ate it, but used it to demonstrate the growing power and wealth of England. But this sweet passion had terrible consequences. In the 16th century, dentistry was at a primitive level. Toothbrushes were rough, and most people cleaned their teeth with sticks, cloths, or powders made from crushed eggshells. The Queen, however, had her own special mixture: homemade toothpaste made from sugar and herbs. Yes, sugar. The very thing that destroyed her teeth, she tried to use to clean them. Even worse was the fact that she used coarse abrasive powders, which over time wore away tooth enamel. Gradually, her once royal smile became frightening. Foreign visitors noticed it. By the 1590s, her teeth had turned black, broken, or had fallen out entirely. Rumor had it that her breath was so unpleasant that it made people physically uncomfortable to be near her, and sometimes her speech was difficult to understand because she spoke through a mouth full of decay. Nevertheless, she refused to allow doctors to remove her teeth. Elizabeth was known for her stubbornness and her intense fear of pain. To convince her that it was not deadly, one courtier even voluntarily allowed a tooth to be pulled out in her presence. Imagine someone screaming in pain willingly, just to make the Queen open her mouth. But perhaps the strangest thing was what happened next. Instead of mocking her decayed teeth, noble ladies at her court began to imitate her. Yes, indeed. They deliberately blackened their own teeth with soot and charcoal to look like the Queen. At the palace, even tooth decay became a symbol of high status. If the Queen had black teeth, then black teeth came to signify beauty, power, and wealth. The darker the smile, the richer one appeared. In a world where anything the Queen did became a fashion, even rotting teeth became something to be desired. That is the power of monarchy. Bathing. You may have heard the shocking phrase, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." Some claim that these words were indeed spoken by Queen Elizabeth I, while others believe it to be a myth. But in any case, it reflects the attitude of people of that time toward cleanliness and how different it was from today. In that era, water was considered dangerous. People believed it could carry diseases, weaken the body, and let bad air, what they called miasmas, enter it. This invisible poison was blamed for spreading deadly illnesses such as the plague. For many, bathing was not considered beneficial, but rather dangerous. That is why Queen Elizabeth tried to avoid it. Instead of washing with soap and water, she had a different routine. She changed her linen undergarments, known as shifts, sometimes several times a day. People believed that soft fabric absorbed sweat, dirt, and toxins from the skin. No water was required, only fresh fabric. When she freshened up, she used rosewater, vinegar, or herbal infusions prepared by her royal apothecaries. These liquids were gently rubbed into her skin by maids. It was a slow and meticulous ritual, not for hygiene, but for maintaining appearance. Her body was regarded more as a sacred object than a human one. It had to remain flawless at any cost. Why not simply take a proper bath? Because it was far from simple. Her palaces had no plumbing, no running water. If she wanted a bath, it meant bringing out a huge wooden tub, heating dozens of buckets of water, and summoning at least 3 servants to pour, stir, and prepare everything needed. It resembled organizing a royal ceremony. Bathing was a luxury, not an everyday habit, and yet she was considered clean. She wore hundreds of dresses made of fine silk and velvet. She smelled of flowers and spices. She had scented gloves, perfumed handkerchiefs, and she demanded that her appearance be impeccable from head to toe. However, all of this created only the illusion of cleanliness, not true sanitary washing. There was no soaping, no rinsing, no soap. Elizabeth avoided bathing not because she was dirty or lazy. She did it out of fear that too much reality would ruin her perfect image. Water could wash away her white makeup. It could destroy the illusion. It could make her an ordinary person. And in her view, a queen should not be a person. Makeup. The face of Queen Elizabeth was one of the most recognizable in history. White as porcelain, smooth as a marble statue, and cold as stone. But this was not her real skin. It was a mask, carefully applied every day, not for beauty, but for power. In her time, pale skin symbolized wealth, high social status, and even divine favor. The lighter the complexion, the higher one's place in society was considered. Elizabeth took this ideal to the extreme. She did not merely use cosmetics. She employed them as a tool to create a myth, a perfect image of herself, untouched by aging or weakness. Her favorite product was Venetian ceruse, a deadly mixture of white lead and vinegar. This preparation allowed her to achieve a flawless appearance, concealing blemishes, scars, and signs of fatigue. But beneath that layer, poison was slowly destroying her body. It penetrated the skin, causing rashes, open sores, and long-lasting scars. When her real face became damaged, she simply applied another layer of makeup, again and again, until her outward appearance became a frozen mask. And that was not all. For her lips, she used a bright red paint based on mercury, one of the most dangerous substances on Earth. The more she used it, the worse her health became. Her mood changed, her memory weakened, her body grew frail, and her hands sometimes trembled. All of these were classic signs of mercury poisoning. The queen did not even realize that every time she applied her cosmetics, she was slowly poisoning herself. Why did she continue? Because her face did not belong only to her. It was the face of England. Her image was the source of her power, making her timeless, elevated, and untouchable. She forbade artists to depict her real features and demanded that they use official templates copied from early portraits. Regardless of her age, in paintings she remained young, perfect, and eternal. She even avoided daylight, preferring the soft glow of candles and shadows that concealed the truth. In her later years, her face became so fragile that, according to rumors, it could not be touched. The makeup might crack and crumble. She almost never washed, for doing so would mean erasing the illusion and revealing the fragile, aging woman hidden beneath the Virgin Queen mask. Did she know the cosmetics were killing her? Historians still debate this. But one thing is clear, she chose the mask over her health. She was willing to destroy her body if it meant preserving the legend of Gloriana. To truly understand her hygiene, one must recognize her greatest fear, the fear of losing control. Every inch of her body, her carefully painted face, her scented gloves, and her meticulously chosen aromas, all of it was not merely adornment, but a means of reinforcing her authority and concealing her weakness. In her time, bathing was not just rare, it was considered dangerous. There was a belief that water carried disease, and the act of bathing itself was not only the physical exposure of the body, but also a symbolic vulnerability. It was seen as softness, intimacy, and even risk. And Elizabeth, who had seen her mother Anne Boleyn destroyed by the royal court, could not afford to appear weak. For her, a naked body was a vulnerable body. That is why she avoided water, developing her own system of cleanliness based on scents and rituals. Every day, she surrounded herself with rich, sweet aromas. Her maids prepared rose water, lavender oil, vinegar infusions, and herbal mixtures brewed in special palace rooms. These liquids were not intended to cleanse the skin. Their purpose was to mask odor and create a sense of freshness. A few drops behind the ears, a wipe across the wrists, a scented handkerchief tucked into her sleeve, and she would move through her court like a blooming garden, untouched by human smells. She carried pomanders, small, ornate balls filled with herbs and resins, hidden in her dress or hanging from her belt. When an unpleasant odor approached, she would raise one to her nose and inhale the world she had created. This was not merely for comfort, but a statement. I am not like you. I do not smell like everyone else. Even her clothing was part of this performance. She perfumed her gloves, soaked her handkerchiefs in aromatic oils, and had her dresses made heavy and layered to conceal her body and trap scent. She was known as a generous giver of scented gloves, a gift that came not from her body, but from her carefully crafted image. And her hair, it was almost never washed. Hair washing was considered dangerous, especially for someone who wore such heavy makeup. Her own hair was stiffened with sugar water and egg whites, then powdered. As she aged and her hair began to fall out, likely due to years of lead and mercury poisoning, she turned to wigs, most often red, to preserve her signature look. But beneath the powder and perfume, her body was deteriorating. Years of using toxic cosmetics left her skin scarred, thin, and blistered. There were rumors of peeling skin, open sores, and a face too damaged to be touched. Still, she continued to apply her makeup layer upon layer. She even had mirrors removed from her chambers so that no one, not even she herself, would see the truth. It was said that she had a maid whose sole task was to powder her shoulders in private so that no one would ever glimpse her real skin. Elizabeth became a prisoner of her own myth. She avoided bathing, not only because it was difficult, but because it meant erasing the mask. To wash the body was to admit that it aged, weakened, and became human. And all her life, she strove to convince the world that she was more than human. In her final years, she carried a scented cane. Passing by foul-smelling courtiers, she would lift it to her nose, not only to block the odor, but to remind everyone, I am the queen. I do not belong to your world. Her body was no longer mere flesh and blood. It had become a symbol of the crown, and it had to remain perfect, even if beneath it lay a terrible truth. For Elizabeth, cleanliness was not a matter of health. It was a matter of untouchability. Waste. From the outside, the palaces of Queen Elizabeth I looked like paradise on earth. Massive stone walls, gilded ceilings, velvet carpets, and halls filled with music and silks. But just one step beyond the carefully crafted royal image, and a far less glamorous picture emerged. There were no toilets, no sinks, no plumbing. Yes, behind all that splendor, the queen lived in a world that smelled like an open sewer. Her personal toilet was an elegant wooden chair known as a close stool. On the outside, it appeared refined, but beneath the soft cushion was a simple ceramic pot for collecting waste. It had to be emptied, cleaned, and scented several times a day, by hand. And this task was not performed by an ordinary servant, but by a man with royal authority, the groom of the stool. Do not be fooled by the title. This man was not a cleaner, but a trusted nobleman, chosen for loyalty and discretion. He assisted the queen not only with her bodily functions, but also with dressing, attending to personal matters, and sometimes even participating in private political conversations. In the unusual world of the Tudor court, being present with the queen during her most intimate moments meant being close to power. But the rest of the palace was far less majestic. There were no flushing toilets, only chamber pots, buckets, or basins used by everyone. These containers were emptied into cesspits located beneath floors or directly outside palace walls. The job of cleaning this waste fell to people known as gong farmers or night soil men. They worked at night, carrying buckets of human waste through dark corridors and narrow staircases, trying not to spill anything as they emptied it into open ditches. The stench was dreadful and never truly went away. To mask it, herbs such as lavender, rosemary, and sweet marjoram were burned inside the palace. Flowers were scattered on the floor, and straw or rushes soaked in oils were laid down to trap odors. But these rush mats were cleaned infrequently, allowing dirt, hair, crumbs, and rot to accumulate beneath them, forming a hidden layer of filth. Even the queen could not entirely escape the stench. She moved her court from place to place not only for political reasons, but also to get away from the smell. The longer she stayed in one location, the worse the waste problem became. No perfume could hide the truth forever. This was the true face of royal life, a world of gold and velvet on the outside, but decay and disease within, a place where power lived side by side with filth, where the most powerful woman in England was in a constant battle against the odor of her own kingdom. Queen Elizabeth did not rule by accident. She did so with calculation, style, and the art of deception. Her approach to hygiene was not laziness, it was a deliberate choice. Every mist washing, every drop of rose water, every powdered wig, all of it was part of a grand performance. In a world where a woman's power could be destroyed by a single rumor, Elizabeth made herself untouchable, ageless, almost superhuman. She knew the truth. Bathing could destroy the mask. Water could wash away her power. A bare face could invite judgment. A real, aging body could shatter the illusion she had refined for decades. Instead, she powdered, perfumed, painted, posed, and became a legend. Elizabeth I may not have met today's standards of cleanliness, but by design, she was flawless. In her world, soap and water were not symbols of health, but threats to power. She did not merely survive. She mastered the art of being seen while remaining unknown. In the end, her true cleanliness was not on her skin, but in the image she created. And for the Queen, image was everything. Thank you to everyone who liked the video and subscribed to the channel. What do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments, and see you in the next video.